I need to tell you something important.
How prison gangs quietly took control, California prisons. They had 7 minutes to shut it down. No one believed the warning. Stay with this story. What happens next almost didn't get stopped. The corridor was quiet in a way that never meant calm. Fluorescent lights hummed. Doors stayed locked. A control panel pulsed green, then yellow, then green again. Somewhere inside the housing unit, a routine movement was about to turn into something else. Officer Daniel Reyes saw it first on the board. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't noise. It was timing. 3 inmates from different cells requested movement within the same 90-second window. Each request, by itself, was ordinary. Together, they formed a pattern Reyes had learned to distrust. He leaned closer to the screen, checking the timestamps again. The requests were staggered perfectly. Reyes had worked corrections long enough to know coincidence when it wasn't one. Gangs didn't announce themselves with violence. They announced themselves with precision. The system was designed to prevent coordination. The requests suggested coordination had already happened. Reyes flagged the movement and sent a brief note to the control supervisor. He kept it short. He always did. Requests align. Recommend delay. The response came back almost immediately. Proceed. No indicators. The housing unit followed procedure. Doors opened. Cameras tracked. Logs recorded compliance. Everything looked clean. Too clean. Reyes watched the feeds as inmates stepped into designated zones, stood on painted floor markings, and waited. Their faces were neutral. Their hands were visible. No gestures. No eye contact. No words. That was the part that worried him most. In the prison system, silence wasn't absence. It was instruction. Reyes pulled up historical data. Movement requests from the past 2 weeks. The same pattern appeared again and again, always just below the threshold that triggered alerts. Different names. Different cells. Same timing. He sent another message. Pattern repeating. Recommend pause. This time, there was a delay. While he waited, the unit completed the movement. Doors sealed. The moment passed without incident. No alarms. No reports. On paper, nothing happened. The supervisor's reply arrived 30 seconds later. Noted. No action. Reyes leaned back in his chair and exhaled. He didn't like being right about things no one wanted to hear. He knew how this usually went. Patterns were invisible until they weren't. By the time violence happened, it would be called sudden, unpredictable, unavoidable. The warning would be buried under procedure. Reyes saved the logs to a private folder. He told himself it was just caution. Across the unit, inmate Marcus Hill stood inside his cell, hands relaxed at his sides. He had followed the routine exactly. He always did. Hill had been inside long enough to understand the rules that weren't written. He knew who controlled which phones, which food slots, which recreational times. He knew that survival wasn't about strength. It was about alignment. The alignment had shifted. Hill had received a message earlier that morning. Not spoken. Not written. A placement change at Chow. A pause at the door. A delay that lasted 1 second too long to be accidental. Gangs didn't need meetings. They used structure itself. Hill watched the corridor through the narrow window in his door. He saw an officer glance at a screen. He saw a light change. He saw nothing else. That was enough. The prison was designed to isolate. The gangs used isolation as infrastructure. Hill knew the warning signs because he'd been trained to recognize them. Everyone was, whether they admitted it or not. In here, refusing to see the hierarchy didn't make you safe. It made you invisible. Reyes reviewed the logs again that evening. The movement windows weren't just aligned. They were optimized. Someone had calculated the exact overlap that would allow influence without triggering scrutiny. He searched for names. None repeated. That was the trick. Different inmates. Same timing. Same result. Reyes forwarded his findings to internal operations with a longer note. He included screenshots. He included timestamps. He included his assessment. Possible coordinated control. Not violence. Influence. The reply came the next morning. Insufficient evidence. Reyes wasn't surprised. The system responded to incidents, not structures. Influence didn't bleed. It didn't leave marks. It didn't show up in medical reports. He tried a different angle. He requested a review of commissary data. Item distribution by unit. The results took hours to compile. When they did, the pattern sharpened. Certain items flowed through specific cells at consistent intervals. Not hoarded. Not traded openly. Positioned. Reyes sent one more message. Distribution patterns suggest organized control. This time, there was no reply. Inside the housing unit, Hill felt the shift settle into place. A decision had been made somewhere above him, and it wasn't his. That was how it always worked. The hierarchy had spoken. Quietly, a new inmate arrived that afternoon. Transfer paperwork cleared him into the unit without issue. He followed instructions. He stood where he was told. He didn't look around. Hill noticed who didn't approach him. That told him everything. The gangs didn't recruit loudly. They assessed. They waited. They measured compliance before making contact. Control wasn't taken. It was granted, piece by the system itself. Reyes watched the intake on camera. The new inmate's placement was unremarkable. The timing wasn't. Reyes checked the logs one more time. Movement requests. Commissary flows. Intake placement. Recreation slots. Each category alone looked normal. Together, they formed a map. He started marking connections on a digital board. Not names. Functions. Who influenced movement? Who influenced access? Who influenced silence? The picture that emerged wasn't a gang as people imagined it. It was a network embedded into routine. A hierarchy that didn't need to threaten because it controlled options. Reyes realized the danger wasn't an outbreak of violence. It was stability. As long as the gangs maintained order better than the institution, they would remain invisible. As long as nothing exploded, nothing would be questioned. That was the real risk. Reyes requested a temporary freeze on non-essential movement for the unit. He cited operational review. It was a small ask. Routine. The response came back flagged. Denied. No justification. He stared at the screen, then at the board of patterns he'd built. The system wasn't failing. It was functioning exactly as designed. That night, Hill lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He listened to the building breathe. Air vents. Distant doors. A cart rolling past on schedule. He thought about the warning he'd seen earlier. The hesitation. The pause. The almost mistake. He knew it wouldn't be repeated. The next morning, Reyes arrived early. He logged in and opened his private folder. It was gone. The logs he'd saved were missing. The screenshots had been archived under routine retention. The messages he'd sent were marked resolved. Not deleted. Reclassified. Reyes felt the temperature in the room change. He searched the system again, this time using broader filters. The data was still there, but it no longer aligned. Timestamps had been normalized. Minor variances smoothed out. The pattern had been flattened. That could only happen one way. Someone with access had intervened. Reyes understood then that the warning hadn't been ignored. It had been managed. He leaned back in his chair, hands still, and looked at the camera feed from the housing unit. Everything appeared calm. Orderly. Controlled. Too controlled. He opened the audit trail. And when they checked the logs, everything changed. The first mistake wasn't denial. It was normalization. By the time Officer Daniel Reyes realized the logs had been flattened, the system had already decided there was nothing to see. Variance had been reclassified as noise. Patterns were now within acceptable limits. The warning no longer existed as an anomaly, it existed as data that had been smoothed into silence. Reyes didn't file a complaint. He knew better. Formal complaints triggered reviews. Reviews triggered committees. Committees buried things under timelines that stretched until urgency dissolved. Whatever was happening inside the unit wasn't loud enough to survive that process. So he did what officers always did when procedure failed. He watched. The housing unit ran on schedule. Doors opened when they were supposed to. Meals arrived on time. Recreation occurred in clean, measured intervals. If someone looked at the unit from the outside, They'd see stability. They'd see a place working. Inside, something else was happening. Reyes noticed it in the smallest delays. A door that opened half a second later than usual. A cart that stopped briefly at one cell and not another. An inmate who received commissary first, even though his number came later in the queue. None of it violated policy. That was the point. Inmate Marcus Hill felt the shift long before anyone else admitted it existed. He didn't know who made the decisions, only that they were being obeyed. In the past week, certain men had stopped asking questions. Others had stopped making requests altogether. Control had become invisible. Hill understood the hierarchy because he'd survived it before. In every prison, power settled where predictability lived. Violence drew attention. Order drew trust. The group that could keep the peace quietly earned room to operate. And the system preferred peace. A new inmate disappeared from the unit roster 3 days after his arrival. Not physically, he was still there, still eating, still standing on his marks, but administratively. His name no longer appeared on the internal movement board. His requests were routed manually. Reyes noticed immediately. He searched for the intake record. It existed. He searched for the housing assignment. It existed. He searched for the movement authorization. Nothing. It wasn't an error that could happen accidentally. Someone had adjusted the permissions just enough to remove visibility without triggering alerts. Reyes reported it to his supervisor in person this time. He kept his tone neutral. He showed the discrepancy without commentary. The supervisor listened, nodded, and closed the file. Probably a sync issue, he said. IT will catch it. Reyes waited. Until then, he asked. The supervisor shrugged. He's accounted for. He's not missing. That word again. Missing only mattered when someone vanished completely. Administrative absence didn't trigger alarms. It didn't activate searches. It didn't require explanations. The system was built to track bodies, not influence. Inside the unit, he'll watch the inmate with no name adapt quickly. He learned where to stand without being told. He waited when others moved. He received items he hadn't ordered. No one spoke to him directly. That was how rank was communicated. Hill knew the danger wasn't to the inmate. It was to the balance. When someone existed outside the records, they existed entirely inside the hierarchy. They answered to one authority only. And that authority wasn't on the payroll. Reyes pulled camera footage from the previous week and played it back at double speed. He wasn't looking for fights or gestures. He was looking for stillness. Who didn't move when others did? Who waited without instruction? Who never appeared surprised? The same faces appeared again and again. Not together. Never together. Always positioned at junctions where movement intersected. Reyes realized then that the hierarchy wasn't enforced through intimidation. It was enforced through predictability. Inmates followed the internal order because it made their days smoother. Less waiting. Fewer disruptions. Small advantages that added up to survival. The mistake the system made was assuming that calm equaled compliance. It didn't. It equaled delegation. When a maintenance issue shut down one wing unexpectedly, the response should have been confusion. Instead, the unit adjusted seamlessly. Inmates repositioned themselves without instruction. Requests dropped. Noise decreased. The gang structure absorbed the disruption before staff even finished rerouting schedules. Reyes documented the incident carefully. He sent it up with a note that avoided loaded language. Unit self-regulated during disruption. The response came back curt. Positive indicator. That was when he understood the second mistake. The institution didn't just tolerate the hierarchy. It relied on it. As long as the internal order reduced incidents, it was considered a success. The cost, loss of authority, invisible coercion, control ceded to inmates, wasn't measured. Because it didn't show up in quarterly reports. Hill felt the weight of that realization settle over the unit like humidity. No announcements were made. No threats issued. Everyone simply adjusted their behavior to align with what was now expected. Those who didn't fell behind. A man 2 cells down missed a commissary cycle. No reason given. He waited quietly. The next cycle, his name reappeared. He didn't complain. He didn't have to be told why. Reyes tried one last approach. He requested a temporary reassignment to the unit for familiarization. He wanted proximity. He wanted to feel the rhythm directly. The request was denied. Staffing constraints. Instead, a less experienced officer was rotated in. Someone who followed procedure perfectly. Someone who wouldn't notice timing shifts because he hadn't learned to distrust them yet. That was the third mistake. Experience was replaced with compliance. Within days, Reyes noticed his access privileges narrow. Not revoked, just adjusted. Certain views required additional authentication. Certain logs took longer to load. Friction was being introduced. He wasn't being silenced. He was being slowed. Inside the unit, he'll sense the tightening too. The hierarchy adapted. Instructions became more subtle. Control relied less on positioning and more on absence. Who wasn't allowed to speak? Who wasn't allowed to wait? The system's blindness created space for something more rigid to grow. Reyes stared at the unit feed late one night and realized something unsettling. If the gangs decided to escalate, the institution wouldn't see it coming. Not because it wasn't watching, but because it was watching the wrong things. The mistake wasn't ignoring the warning. It was redefining the warning out of existence. And by the time anyone realized what had been lost, the hierarchy was no longer operating inside the system. It was operating instead of it. The final truth didn't arrive with sirens. It arrived quietly, buried in routine. Officer Daniel Reyes saw it the morning the unit passed inspection without a single note. Every checklist item was green. Every metric was normal. Incidents were down. Requests were processed faster than average. The unit was being cited as a model of stability. That was when Reyes understood the system had already lost. He stopped looking for proof of misconduct. There wouldn't be any. The hierarchy had learned how to function without leaving fingerprints. Nothing was stolen. No orders were shouted. No threats were recorded. Control no longer needed enforcement. It had become expectation. Inside the unit, Marcus Hill felt the shift complete. The men who once tested boundaries no longer did. They had learned where the edges were before touching them. Decisions happened early, quietly, long before staff schedules ever intersected with inmate movement. The gangs didn't rule through fear. They ruled through certainty. Hill knew who decided meal order, who determined recreation pacing, who approved which grievances were worth filing. None of it was written down. None of it needed to be. The rules lived in absence, in what didn't happen. No one crossed lanes. No one asked twice. Reyes traced the change back through archived data, not for violations but for alignment. The graphs showed it clearly when viewed differently. Incident reduction correlated directly with consolidation of influence. Fewer disruptions meant fewer checks. Fewer checks meant more autonomy. The system had mistaken quiet for success. The truth was that authority had been subcontracted. The administration didn't give power to gangs intentionally. It gave power to efficiency. And the groups that could deliver order without drawing attention were rewarded with space. Reyes compiled his findings into a report that avoided loaded terms. He didn't mention gangs. He didn't accuse individuals. He described a phenomenon: decentralized control emerging within closed systems when oversight prioritized stability over verification. The response was polite and dismissive. "Your observations are noted," the reply read. However, current outcomes indicate effective management. That was the moment Reyes stopped trying to fix the unit, because the truth was now clear. The institution couldn't intervene without admitting it had been replaced. Hill sensed the end of the cycle coming not through violence, but through tightening. New cameras were installed. Schedules became less flexible. Access narrowed. The administration didn't name the problem, but it felt it. And the hierarchy adjusted again. It always did. Power flowed where resistance was lowest. When visibility increased, control moved deeper, into favors, into silence, into unspoken alignment. The gangs didn't challenge the system. They adapted inside it. That was the final realization Reyes wrote down for himself, not for any report. Prisons are designed to control bodies, but they are lived through systems of influence. When institutions reward calm without understanding how it's achieved, they invite others to manage what they no longer can. The truth wasn't that gangs had taken over. The truth was more uncomfortable. They had been allowed to, because they were effective, because they reduced noise, because they kept the machine running. Reyes requested a transfer weeks later. Not out of fear, but clarity. The unit would continue as it was, praised for its order, studied for its efficiency, unaware of who actually maintained it. Hill remained, navigating the hierarchy like a map etched into memory. He knew the rules. Everyone did. They weren't enforced by threats, but by consequence. Those who followed them survived quietly. Those who didn't faded into irrelevance. No report would capture that. No metric would flag it. And no inspection would stop it. Because the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. This could happen again. If this story shook you, the next one will be worse.